Hello everyone, this is Professor Vigneron, and today I will be talking about funding and financing for an entrepreneur. The function of funding and financing is very important because you require some money to grow your business. However, we don't have much experience doing this, and this function is oftentimes becomes very difficult for most entrepreneurs. This is a function that you can learn, and with experience, you become better at it. So people deal with it in different ways, but most of the time is you require this funding because of a need of cash flow. You will have to make some investment and you have to develop some new product. So the cash flow comes from the very simple fact that at the beginning, you will need some money in order to create your inventory. You will have to pay some people and you're gonna have to start advertising, and therefore it requires this cash flow. The investment is you may have to buy something. Maybe you have to buy some property, which it might be an intellectual property, such as copyrights or trademarks or something that you have to buy. And all of this will cost money. Maybe you have to get a patent, and all this capital investment can be very expensive. A patent can run you up to $100,000. And therefore, if you need multiple patents, this will be expensive. In addition, and that may not happen from the very beginning, but soon it will happen, is you will have to develop some new products. So the idea behind this is that you start with a product and quickly realize that having just one product is not going to be sufficient. Or you start with a new product, you are successful, and quickly you realize that to keep being successful, you have to innovate. Some industries have a long time requirement for developing this innovation. So I'm thinking of an industry that I know, the watchmaking, for example, will require easily between 2 to 6 years to develop a new watch, as long as you're developing a whole system of a watch, not just a simple update. So all of these three situations require you to look for some funding. When you look for funding, you have four sources of funding. The first one is the personal funding using your own personal assets. Then you have equity, where you will give something out of the company. And then you have debt financing, which will require essentially a loan. And then there's creative sources that you will be using, which are mostly connected to your personal funds type of method. So personal funds, that's the one that is the most common, and that's the one that is the most obvious, is when you will use your own savings in order to develop your entrepreneurship. Then comes looking around to the people that you know, the family and friends, looking for their investment in order for you to grow your entrepreneurship. The idea is this is sort of difficult because you may not have personal funds, you may not have friends that are available to give you some money, and now you are left to have to find a solution, another solution, and this is called bootstrapping. Bootstrapping is this idea that you're going to try to find ways to avoid using too much of your money. You're going to try to make your money more effective. You're going to cut all kinds of costs. You're going to really look at not spending money on what's not necessary. This seems very obvious, but from my experience, I see entrepreneurs spending a lot of money on things that are not necessary. They think it's necessary, and in fact, with experience, you realize that it was not required. I made many mistakes myself like that, where I spend money on unnecessary things. The typical thing is advertising in the wrong places and thinking that it's going to work. Advertising is a continuous process. Advertising is a little bit like traditional medicine. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pills are not going to do it. It's a long process because it's sort of natural. And here is just a little bit the same. Business is very organic and there's a long process. And there's very few things, if any, that you will do that will have a direct direct outcome. And so it's this continuous investment of time and money that's going to make you successful. And therefore, you have to be very careful in not spending too much of these resources and making it last. You have to be patient, in other words. So what are the typical bootstrapping methods? So it's not buying things that are new. That's not always recommended, in the sense that maybe what you will, let's say you're a photograph, maybe you buy the camera being new, but maybe you buy used lenses because the camera is really what you're going to be continuously using versus using multiple type of lenses, and therefore you will be careful in buying used lenses, and many of those used lenses. It's the idea. But the more you try to save, the better it would be. Maybe you will try to buy with other people. Maybe you will rent instead of buying. Um, Maybe you will try to work in getting paid faster than you're paying others. So that's a very important and very obvious method of bootstrapping, which I'm using and I've used a lot. And that allows you to sort of make your money work better, and have the possibility to use the cash that you have in some other things. Um, Avoiding unnecessary expense, that's what I've said. So a lot of expenses that I did that were really unnecessary were with things that had to do with sponsoring. So in the music industry, I think you have to be very careful as well. Having too many events, trying to be in too many places at the same time. That is very important. In my business also, I was participating in a lot of competition to win prizes, and I was winning a lot of competition, and I was realizing that winning this competition and getting awards for my products was very good, but it didn't get as much business as I thought. So I started slowing down the amount of competition I would participate. It's expensive. Participating in a competition, it's easily $1,000. And then when you win, you have to buy the medals and all that. And that's how these competition businesses make money. And those medals will cost you another 500 or 1,000 per product that you won. And so it's several $1,000s. How much return do you get? So what I started doing is instead of doing it every year for some competition, I do it every other year. And some competition I just don't do it because there's so many that you can participate. So that's a unnecessary expense. And by doing this, I saved more than $5,000 a year that I was spending before. Buying products in a way where they are more affordable. And so here I give the example of Alibaba. I have used Alibaba, and the idea behind using Alibaba was not just about saving by buying products on places which are known to be cheap, like Alibaba, but the fact that I could actually reach out to businesses that are looking to sell products that I could evaluate and see that they were high quality, and not have to go to a trade show, for example. So a lot of times I was looking for packaging and some kind of suppliers for some goods that I was required for putting together my products, and I would go to trade shows, and that was expensive. And now I go to Alibaba and find a lot of my suppliers, and it's essentially just sending emails. So it takes a little time to evaluate them, and you have to ask for samples and all this, but you still have to do that when you go to a trade show. So you don't waste, you probably gain time compared to a trade show. It's not as good as building the relationship. I oftentimes feel that the people I gain from Alibaba, I have to start over again every time I need to put another order. It's hard to have a continuity versus the people you find in trade shows are probably better in terms of having a business where there is some continuity. And that's the benefit of going and keeping on going to trade shows, is you show continuity that you exist as a supplier, versus Alibaba, it's kind of a come and go. And they're trying to give you a rating system so you can see that they are continuous businesses, but still. Then Fiverr is a business that I've used because I've used a lot of agencies before, and these agencies were very expensive. And in addition, they were always busy, and I didn't get as much services as I used to, and the invoices started getting higher and higher. And I decided to try Fiverr, and Fiverr has the same problem. It's very difficult to get continuity, but the price is, we're talking 20, 50 times cheaper. Like I said, it's incomparable in terms of price, and the quality is 90%, 95% as good as an agency. And like I said, 10 times cheaper. So you have to look at new options. I think the internet is really offering these new options, and that's what's very good. And know that more and more people are connected. I think everyone has to offer options online. And if you need options, you go online and you will find these people. Now everyone is online, the good and the bad. And it's a question of evaluating them and looking at the continuity of the business and services that they're offering. Sharing offices and sharing employees and getting cross help, that is very important. And that's something that I do as well. Hiring interns is an opportunity when you have a specific need and there's a short time and you find an intern to work on that. That is something that is very helpful. So the problem is when you are looking for funding is you have to look at how much funding do you need. And my experience here is that most people are always not planning for enough. So being as precise as possible, this is very important. Then based on the amount that you need and based on the situation of your company is you will be looking for the most appropriate type of financing, and that's what we will be discussing. And then you will develop some kind of strategy in order to discuss your need of financing and seek the financing that you need depending on who you're seeking the financing from. To prepare this financing is you have essentially two common alternatives. One is to give away some of the ownership of your company, and this is called equity funding. And another one is to get a loan, but to get a loan is you need to have some kind of warranty, and therefore you need to have some kind of assets in order to get this debt. For the most cases, there is some financing that will be debt financing, which won't have the same type of collateral, but that is a specific case. So depending on your business, you will have more chances of getting money from an investor than getting money from a friend. So it depends. It depends on the likelihood of your business to start making money sooner. So the sooner you start making money, the more you can look for investors, external investors, versus the longer you will start making some money and your prediction to make some money, the more you will have to look for friends and your own resources. Another thing is the growth of your market. So if you're in a fast growing market, which is very attractive, you will have more chances to get external investors versus if you're in a market that is seen as declining, you'll have to rely on yourself. The amount of experience that you have. So the more experience you have, the more you can rely on external investors. And the less experience, the more you will have to rely on yourself. The amount of money that you've invested or the amount of money that you have that you can keep investing in the business will make a difference as well, because it would show some reliance on yourself versus reliance on others. And essentially, the more your business has proven sales, the more your business has had profit, the more you will be able to look for external investors. External investors are trying to maximize the chance that they will get something. Obviously, they're also trying to maximize the amount that they can get. So for a startup which is unproven, this is more difficult to evaluate, and therefore they are most likely not to invest. And therefore, in that situation, you're most likely to have to think of your own investment in the business. So at the very beginning is you're most likely to have to rely on yourself. And in that situation is you want to be very wise in where you invest in order to keep having enough so you can get to a point of growth. And the minute you have you're in a point of growth, you may keep wanting to bootstrap and not have external investors, because external investors will have some difficulty because you have to make more money in order to not only pay everyone that makes your business run, make some money yourself, and then pay someone else. So sometimes it's an added weight to have an investor, and it's wise to take a little bit more time and not have this added weight. And in addition, investors are involved at different level. Some are not involved at all, at all. They are just passive investors. But still, this is some pressure that you have. You have deadlines, and in some way, this is also good because you have to, if not for yourself, for someone else, is you have to perform. But sometimes they are more involved, and when they are more involved, it can be all good or it can be all bad. If they are more involved and it's someone that you work well with, and they're really capable, maybe they have more experience on some aspects of the business and they can be helpful. Maybe they have connections and they speed up the process of growth and making sales and making connections to suppliers or to a distribution network. That is very good. But I would say most of the time there will be conflicts because there's different interests, and an investor is oftentimes more investing to see their money fluctuate and grow than for the success of the individual that they have invested on. So when you talk about investors, is you have to think about how to approach them. And so one of the simple things that you need to work on is called the elevator pitch. This is good for any businesses because investors come from different ways. There's the financial investors, that's the one I'm talking here, but there's investors as of people that you want to believe in your business. And these may be the people that will buy the products. So I'm not talking about the customers, but I'm talking about the trade channel. And so having a good elevator pitch for the trade channel is very important. Having a good elevator pitch for your suppliers is very good. So all of this is not a waste of time. So it needs to be brief, and it needs to be between 45 seconds and 2 minutes. So here I have a 60 seconds typical elevator pitch, which starts like all good entrepreneurship project should start by explaining what is the need, what is the problem, what is the opportunity that you're trying to solve. So obviously this is the subject of any one sheet document that anyone is working on, and that's why is this something that is important, and who is this important? Who is the person that you solving the problem? And then why are you someone or your company most likely to be able to solve this problem? And then do you have any competitors? And then what do you need? Do you need money? Do you need what kind of assistance do you need? That concludes your 60 seconds. I run the Wells Fargo Center for Small Business and Entrepreneurship, and every year since 2007, we have a fast pitch competition where students come and compete for the best pitch of the year. I invite you to come to that event. This event is usually early May every year. And so this year is 2020. This is the 13th year that we are doing this. This is something that I wanted to do a long time ago, and I started in 2007 before this was popular because I felt that there was a need for students to do this. Obviously now this is very popular. Universities have multiple of these competitions, and it's been made popular by a show on TV called Shark Tank. So I think it is a skill that you need to have. It is a skill even when you're looking for a job. It's sort of the same skill that you need to have when you get started with someone that you're saying that you're looking for a job or you're looking for something. Other funding comes from investors that will be looking at some kind of equity funding, which means that they will try to get something from you. So the first type that I want to talk about is the business angel. So business angels are individuals who are part of an organization whose organization is facilitating the relationship or the meeting between entrepreneurs and investors. And these people are usually older with some experience. They oftentimes entrepreneurs themselves and looking for maybe investing in another company, having had the experience of knowing how it works. So they have a better feel of what do they know and what they think is going to work. And this is a way to really increase how you can make some money is by investing in other businesses and not running them directly. So these investors may be making very small investments that could be $10,000 up to hundreds of thousands of dollars, but they're not going to be putting millions. They're looking at companies that have a likelihood of growing very fast. They're not planning usually to be there for forever. There are groups of angel investors in LA, and they're some of the most famous actually in the United States, the Tech Coast Angels, Maverick Angels, and Pasadena Angels. The other group of equity investors are called the venture capital investors. And this is more structured. It's actually a firm which will have partners that would have investors in this firm, and these investors invest in the venture capital firm, and then the venture capital firm invest in specific businesses that they have selected. So there are many of these capital firms in the US. They're looking for startups, but they're looking for startups that are already up and running. So they look for companies that are growing and not maybe making some profits, for sure making some sales, having some employees. Is they are looking for businesses that are more into a situation called scaling up situation. They are not looking for investors specifically to get started, and they're looking more for investors who are more sophisticated than angel investors, and will invest more money and will have different level of a relationship with the company that they invest in. The venture capitalist may be more involved in the process because they may have a structure in the back to give guidance to the company that they're investing on, so that way they can sort of keep an eye better and also make sure that this company has had all the chances in order to succeed. So the type of help may be legal help in addition to this financial help, but they may be again based on some network and connections. So they don't found as many, those venture capitalists, as many businesses as the business angels. Obviously, there's many more business angels. Business angels are not all under some kind of structure. They may be people that know other people, and they meet, and then they get involved in the process of investing. So business angels are everywhere, not always under some structure, but the ones that are under the structure are, it's more clear that they are there for that reason. The problem with it can be a problem with the business angels too, because there are several phases to deal with angel investor under some of these organizations that I mentioned earlier, because they have a structure and how they go about investing in businesses, which means it's not just based on one meeting. There's multiple phases. Some of these angel investor organizations also help those businesses formulate the presentation to the angel investors. So oftentimes, is you have, when it's structured under angel investor business, they would have some people that are like coaches that would select the best businesses, and the best businesses will present and perform in front of a jury of angel investors. Then they will select the one that they like, and then the one that they like will go into some kind of training to further prepare themselves to present in front of angel investors, and then the angel investors will communicate if they're interested. That's when it's the most structured within angel investors. For venture capital firms, it's always like that way and more, which means that they have multiple phases of investment, and there may be different people investing at these different phases, and they can be funding on all the phases or just some of the phases. And the due diligence that needs to be done to get accepted or interest a venture capital firm is much more complicated than angel investors. What I mean by complicated is it's much more formal, where you need to apply and make several presentations. You have to come prepared with reports. So again, in the Wells Fargo Center, when we do this annual event, we have the 60 seconds pitch, but we also have something that is more sophisticated and formal, which is a 5-minute presentation using PowerPoint, where you have to go into more details. In this class, the music, entertainment, entrepreneurship, we have this more formal piece come in the third presentation, where in the third presentation is you have to really explain the objectives very clearly, the activities that you will have to meet these objectives, and then the amount of money that this activity will cost, and the amount of return that you think that these expenses based on these activities will return, and when you will, where and when you will have losses, and how long it will take for these losses to turn into gains, and really argue on why do you think it's going to work. So that's what venture capitalists want, is a more formal structure that explains the likelihood of success. Okay, so I just explained that in the one before. So in the music industry, you have this venture capital firm, plus 8 equity, which is run by a gentleman called Patel, who's very involved in the music industry. And they've already founded 8 companies which have to do very much with technology and music. So there's a music technology conference in Los Angeles. There is a specific event, which is a little bit like the Wells Fargo Center annual event that we have, where there are different startups and firms that compete for the Medium Lab with some judge that looks at these businesses. So there are more and more of these activity of venture capital and fast pitch and elevator pitch and presentation, investor presentation in the music industry for funding, but also to train the people who are interested in this industry to learn about how to get funding and financing. And then eventually you have the last type of debt financing, which is the idea that you can get a loan, but you need to have, in order to get a loan, is you need to have something to warranty the payment in case there is no payment. So you have to put some assets as collateral in order to get a loan from a bank in order to run your business. And here again is you have to worry about the likelihood of being able to make money in order to repay those interests. And in that situation, you can look at the SBA loan, which is warranted by the government through a process of due diligence as well. The amounts are much smaller than the commercial bank that you could get. The SBA are not very complicated, but they are a little bit more tedious and slower than the commercial bank process in order to get a loan. But then you don't need collateral or as much collateral depending on how much of the loan that you're getting. The last point I want to make is that when you have a startup and you're running the startup, obviously it is very important to have a profit. But what has been very interesting in these past 20 years is this amount of startups that have generated so much popularity from the .com to the application to all the virtual world that we are living right now, which are not making any money, not making any profits, but yet they're really growing and they have a very large amount of investors that are investing in them. So profit is not the only way to evaluate a business. To evaluate a business, you also look at the cost of getting the same business to at the same level. So meaning like if you have a business that has a lot of consumers, but you're not making a profit, yet you're building a large amount of consumers, and that is valuable. You're building a notoriety as well that is valuable, and it may be the structure or the infrastructure of your company that is really worth something. And that's why sometimes as an entrepreneur is you are investing in your startup, you're growing your startup, you're growing your business for the money that this business is generating, but also for the value that this business is worth. And the big payday may not come from what the business is making in 10 years, but it may be from what this business is worth in 10 years. So valuation are very difficult. And so there is very much an art in valuation. And here it talks about the difference between the art and the science. And the science is really looking at the bottom line, is how much money is, how much sales are you doing and how much profit are you making versus what is the business worth compared to having to build the same business. So this concludes my presentation on funding and financing. Goodbye.